Something my granddaddy used to tell us. You know Macumba? Voodoo. Granddad was a priest in Trinidad. He used to tell us, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
Dawn of the Dead is much more than a zombie film. It's a razor-sharp commentary on consumer culture wrapped in one of the most intense survival stories ever put on screen. Directed by George A. Romero, this 1978 film is the follow-up to Night of the Living Dead, and it expands on the zombie apocalypse in a much more grandiose and complex way. The plot follows a small group of survivors who take refuge in a sprawling shopping mall where they must fend off hordes of zombies while grappling with their own deteriorating humanity. What makes Dawn of the Dead so iconic is its mix of gory horror and biting social satire. Romero uses the mall as a perfect metaphor for consumerism, zombies mindlessly wandering the aisles, much like shoppers, and asks the question, what makes us so different from the undead? Tom Savini's groundbreaking special effects bring the horror to life with gruesome detail, and the film's pacing keeps you on edge from start to finish. It's a masterclass in balancing horror and commentary, cementing its place as one of the best zombie films of all time. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre isn't just a horror film, it's a cultural landmark that redefined terror in cinema. Directed by Tobe Hooper, this 1974 classic follows a group of friends who, while on a road trip, stumble upon a family of cannibals in rural Texas. At the center of this madness is Leatherface, a hulking, chainsaw-wielding figure whose iconic mask, made of human skin, has haunted horror fans for decades. What makes this film particularly terrifying is its documentary-style realism. There's a gritty, almost home video quality to it that makes everything feel too real for comfort. And yet, despite its notorious reputation for violence, much of Texas Chainsaw Massacre leaves the most gruesome details up to the viewer's imagination, creating a unique blend of implied horror and raw, visceral tension. Its themes of isolation, family madness, and the collapse of civilization hit hard, and its impact on the genre is undeniable. This is a film that sticks with you, making even broad daylight feel menacing.
I'm calling on all the spirits of everyone who's ever died in this house. Jessica. I'm calling on all the spirits of everyone who's ever died in this house.
Let's Scare Jessica to Death is a haunting, atmospheric, psychological horror film that taps into themes of paranoia, isolation, and the fragility of the mind. Directed by John Hancock and released in 1971, the film follows Jessica, a woman recently released from a mental institution, as she moves to a secluded farmhouse with her husband and a friend in an attempt to start over. However, it's not long before Jessica begins experiencing strange, unsettling events. Visions of a mysterious woman, whispers in the night, and eerie townsfolk. As the line between reality and delusion begins to blur, Jessica and the audience are left questioning what's real and what's the product of her fragile mental state. The film's slow burn tension, ghostly visuals, and unnerving sound design create a sense of creeping dread that builds throughout. Let's Scare Jessica to Death is a deeply psychological horror film, one that explores themes of madness and fear of the unknown, all while leaving you wondering what's real and what exists only in the mind.
The funeral is about to begin.
Don Coscarelli's Phantasm is one of those rare horror films that feels like a fever dream come to life, blending elements of science fiction, fantasy, and pure horror into something utterly unique. Released in 1979, the film tells the story of a young boy named Mike, his older brother Jody, and their friend Reggie as they uncover a strange and terrifying plot involving a mortician known as the Tall Man. What makes Phantasm so captivating is its complete disregard for the conventional rules of storytelling. The film plays with dream logic, constantly shifting between reality and nightmare, leaving the audience as disoriented as the characters themselves. The tall man, with his imposing stature and eerie presence, became an instant horror icon, and the film's surreal imagery, from the floating silver spheres that drill into their victims' heads to the strange interdimensional creatures, cemented its place in cult horror history. Phantasm is more than just a horror movie. It's a surreal odyssey that challenges your perception of reality, leaving you haunted long after the credits roll.
Silly girl, you have to make all this fuss. It's just a little frog. It'll do that poor sore throat good. Now, anyone would think you didn't want to get better. Now, in he goes.
The Wicker Man is often described as the quintessential folk horror film, blending pagan rituals with a deeply unsettling atmosphere. Directed by Robin Hardy, this 1973 British classic tells the story of Sergeant Neil Howie, a devout Christian police officer sent to a remote Scottish island to investigate the disappearance of a young girl. What he finds there is a society completely detached from the Christian values he holds dear, an insular community that worships the old gods, practices bizarre rituals, and hides dark secrets. The film's genius lies in its juxtaposition of pastoral beauty with creeping horror. Set against lush landscapes and under bright sunlight, The Wicker Man challenges traditional horror aesthetics, making the eventual descent into terror all the more shocking. As Howie unravels the mystery, the tension escalates to one of the most shocking and iconic endings in horror history. It's a slow burn of dread and disbelief, and its exploration of belief, tradition, and sacrifice has made it a touchstone of the genre. David Cronenberg's The Brood is a chilling fusion of psychological horror and body horror, exploring the physical manifestations of emotional trauma in disturbing ways. Released in 1979, the film centers on Frank Carveth, a man investigating the unconventional therapy his estranged wife Nola is undergoing at a psychiatric institute. The therapy, led by the mysterious Dr. Raglan, allows patients to physically externalize their emotions. In Nola's case, her pent-up rage results in the birth of a grotesque, childlike creatures that carry out her darkest desires. The Brood is one of Cronenberg's most personal films, reflecting his own feelings of divorce and custody battles, and it deals with themes of repression, emotional abuse, and the destructive power of anger. The film is unsettling, not only for its grotesque imagery, but also for its exploration of the human psyche. Cronenberg's fascination with the connection between mind and body is on full display here, making The Brood both a disturbing horror film and a dark, twisted reflection on the horrors that lie within us. Years before the slasher craze of the late 70s and 80s, Bob Clark's Black Christmas quietly pioneered the genre, introducing many of the tropes that would later become staples. Set during the holiday season, the film follows a group of sorority sisters who are terrorized by a deranged killer lurking in their house, making obscene phone calls before picking them off one by one. What makes Black Christmas stand out, even today, is its unsettling atmosphere and slow building tension. Unlike many later slashers, the film doesn't rely on excessive gore or jump scares. Instead, it crafts a sense of dread through its eerie visuals, claustrophobic setting, and the unnerving voice of the killer, referred to only as Billy. The audience is never given a clear reason for Billy's actions, making him all the more terrifying. The film's bleak tone and ambiguous ending leave viewers unsettled, and it remains one of the most influential and underrated horror films of the decade. Suspiria is less a film and more of a hallucinatory experience, plunging viewers into a surreal, nightmarish world. Dario Argento's 1977 masterpiece is often regarded as one of the most visually striking horror films ever made, with its saturated colors, elaborate set pieces, and an unforgettable score by prog rock band Goblin. The plot centers on Susie Banyan, a young American ballet dancer who travels to a prestigious dance academy in Germany, only to discover it harbors a dark, supernatural secret, one involving a coven of witches. The film doesn't rely on traditional narrative structure, instead it prioritizes mood, atmosphere, and sensory overload. From the vivid reds and greens that bathe the screen to the constant sense of unease created by Argento's disorienting camera work, Suspiria is a film that doesn't let you settle in. It keeps you off balance, drenched in an ever-growing sense of dread. Argento's vision is a fever dream brought to life, where even the most beautiful images hide something deeply sinister.
Do I just cut them up like regular chickens?
Sure, just cut them up like regular chickens.
David Lynch's Eraserhead is a surreal nightmare in cinematic form. A film that defies easy explanation and instead plunges the viewer into a world of grotesque imagery and existential dread. Released in 1977, Eraserhead was Lynch's feature debut, and it quickly became a cult classic, celebrated for its haunting atmosphere and disturbing visuals. The film follows Henry Spencer, a man living in a decaying industrial landscape whose life takes a nightmarish turn when his girlfriend gives birth to a grotesque, constantly wailing baby. Lynch uses minimal dialogue, eerie soundscapes, and black and white cinematography to create a dreamlike, almost otherworldly environment. The film is filled with bizarre and unsettling images, from the nightmarish creature that is Henry's child to the haunting figure of the lady in the radiator. Eraserhead is less concerned with traditional narrative and more focused on evoking a feeling, one of suffocating anxiety and alienation. It's a film that lingers in your subconscious, challenging you to interpret its strange, abstract horrors. Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes is a brutal, raw horror film that taps into primal fears of survival and the breakdown of civilization. Released in 1977, the film tells the story of the Carter family, who find themselves stranded in the Nevada desert and targeted by a savage clan of cannibalistic mutants. The film is a relentless, gritty portrayal of violence and desperation as the family is forced to fight back against their attackers in order to survive. Craven was inspired by the legend of the Sawney Bean Clan, a group of Scottish cannibals, and he uses this backdrop to explore themes of human savagery and the thin line between civilization and barbarism. The desert setting becomes a character in itself, with its barren, unforgiving landscape mirroring the harsh brutality of the events that unfold. The Hills Have Eyes is a visceral experience, pulling no punches in its depiction of violence and the lengths people will go to protect their own. It's a landmark in horror, solidifying Craven's reputation as a master of the genre.
Cut me down, boy!
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Nerds Films, and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on any of our deep dives into film history. Thanks for watching. And until next time, keep the lights on, because you never know what might be lurking in the shadows.